Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Shahab and welcome back to the new series on From Maps to AI Agents. In this video, we are going to continue what we started in the previous video, which is to set up a Python backend for our web app. So what we did in the previous video was that we almost set up everything for the Python backend, and we added NDVI analysis or NDVI calculation. And now we are going to see what changes or what improvements we should make to the front end, to the Next.js app, to be able to communicate with the Python backend. In the Next.js app, we have to add some new files, and these new files consist of several components. So if I go to the UI, you see that we had this new dialog which we use to import our image. So we need to first implement this component. For that, we need to create a new dialog, and again we use Shadcn for our UI components, and a couple of other components like button, input, label. All these come from the Shadcn, and we have some icons that come from the Lucid icons. So when you install Shadcn, Lucid icons are also installed by default. And we also have a new store that we use to store the rasters that are imported into the app. Let's quickly check that. This is the new raster layers store. And again, for this, we use Zustand. So you see that it has several methods. It has raster layers, which is just the list of all the rasters added to the app, and some other ones like individual addition of raster layers, removal, or getting a layer by its ID. Let's go back to the import dialog component, which is this one. So the way that it works is that, let me go back to the app. So here we have a choose file that opens up the file explorer, and there's also the import selected file. After we selected our image, we can import. Let's see how these two components can be implemented. Okay, so now in this component we start with some states. These states actually control the state of the import dialog. For example, the open state, it shows or it controls the visibility of the dialog, when it should be shown, when it should be hidden. We have the selected file state, which actually controls the selected file by the user. Okay, so when the user selects an image, it actually quickly is stored in this state. We have a state that controls the loading state of the import. And then we also have a state to store the error messages. We also have a ref, a use ref. I will tell you what it does. There are several reasons that we may want to use ref, but one of them is that you may want to have more control over a component, and you want to access, for example, some elements in the DOM for that component. You will see in a moment what it does exactly. We also import the add raster layer method from our use raster layer store that we had in here, that it stores the rasters imported by the user. And now we have a couple of handlers. As you can see in here, we first start with the handle file change. So what it does is that when the user selects an image, what should happen? Okay, so that's it intuitively. First of all, it opens the file explorer, and then we just restrict it to only show images of type TIFF. When the files was selected by the user, we store it in the temporary selected file state. And in this case, we don't get any error, so we just assign null. And otherwise, we just set an error, and then we say that no file was selected. Okay, now in here, this is the use ref that you saw earlier, file input ref. We say that if it's available, make sure that we get an error or something. Its value is an empty string. What does it mean? If the user imports something and it's shown in here, we import it, but for some reason we get an error, we want to reset this window. Okay, so we want this field to be removed to be just like the original version. Okay, so like this. And this is what exactly is done here. Okay, it might be, for example, like the name of the image. When we get an error, as an example, image.tiff. So when we get an error, we want to make sure that it's reset. So it becomes like this. Okay. We also have the handle submit. So this is when the user selects an image and then they import it or press this button. So we make sure that it doesn't have its default behavior, and then the rest. Here, in here, in here, and in here, upon submission, we make sure that the imported image is added to the raster store. And then we also have two other handlers, or a function or a method and another handler. So maybe I have to start from here and then go above. So the handle open change is when the user opens the dialog, okay, the import dialog. What should happen? First of all, it should be shown. Okay, so we set the visibility of the dialog to just open, which means that it should be shown. It's just a Boolean. If it's open, we make sure that all the fields are reset. So this is this function, and what it does is that first of all just empties the selected file from the previous run. If there is any input name for the previous run, we make sure that it's now reset. Now let's get into the component. So we define a dialog and select the states for it, the open, unopen change that you saw above. So these are not really important. Let me scroll down to the for. So this is the most important part of this component. This is where you can control what should happen when the user selects a file, or in this case an image, and then they import it. You see that we have on submit here. So on submit callback is actually what should happen when the user imports or presses on the import selected file. But you may ask, okay, this is just a form, where is the button? The button is actually down here. Okay, this is the button, and this button is import selected file, and it has a type of submit, which means that when you click on this button, because it has a submit type, it actually triggers this handler. And then on change, what should happen when the user selects a file or an image in this case, and other things. So nothing really complicated, just a bunch of elements and CSS. So now, if the user imports an image, you see that I can click on this and then the image is imported. But let's now see how the NDVI analysis workflow works. Okay, so now we want to work on this part, which is again another dialog with a select UI in here that shows our image, and then two fields that we should select the red band and the NIR or the near infrared band numbers. Let's see how this can be implemented. So for now, we have another component, NDVI analysis dialog. And again, we import the dialog UI components from the Shadcn. We also import the select component, again from Shadcn, and some other UI components that you can see in here, nothing really special. And now we also have the raster layer, use raster layer store, the Zustand one, from which we actually want to get a list of the imported images, okay, because they are now available application-wide. And here we have the function that actually communicates with the Python backend from the Next.js UI, or actually the Next.js backend. This is a server action, and a server action in Next.js is nothing but a function that runs on the server, not on the client side. Okay, you will see how it works in a moment. And then in here we have again a bunch of states, very much like what you saw in the import dialog. Nothing really different. If I scroll down quickly, and you see that we use actually the exact same pattern that we use for the select or for the import image dialog. And again, we in here have a form which is in here. It has an onSubmit, which has a handler, and then we have the button that is connected with this handler. So if I go up, you see that what should happen when the user, let me show you this. I select the image, I select the bands. What should happen if the user presses the calculate NDVI? It means that the image should be selected. Okay, the current image should be selected by its ID. We should get the red band number and the near infrared band number from what the user input there, which is this one and this one. But what's important is in here, which is the perform NDVI analysis action. Okay, so we send the selected file, the image, to this function, and the red band and near infrared bands. So I don't go through the rest because it's just the same as the file import, but instead I will quickly go to this function. Perform NDVI analysis action, which is actually under the actions in this function, in this file. Okay. And what it does, first of all, let me go up, and you see that it has a use server directive. So what it does is that it makes sure that this file is run on the server. If you don't put this file runs on the client side. So you saw that we also have use client. Use client is when you have a component or you have a file that should run on the client side. Okay, and use server is when you want to make sure that the function or all the functions in this file run on the server. This is important for several reasons. One of the most important one is security. Okay, so you may have some things, for example, some credentials or some things that you don't want to be exposed to the user. So for that, you can have a server action, which is again just a function that runs on the server. And then you want to make sure that nothing secret or confidential is exposed to the user. So in here, we just communicate with our Python backend. Okay, so this is the backend of the Next.js through which we communicate with the Python backend. And how does it work? We'll see. So this is the perform NDVI analysis action. Make sure that it's async. So we get the parameters. For now, ignore image URL. We'll get to that later, but we get the raster file. We define a form data. So we append a key value pair. In this case, the image file, which is the key, and the value is raster file. In here, we get the backend URL for our Python. And if you remember, we said that this is this address. This is actually run using UVcorn. It could be different depending on where you run it. The port could be different. It's just what we use in this video. And in here, we actually create our URL, the complete URL, which which consists of the base URL and the routes. So you saw that before. If I go back to the Python backend, you see that this is how we should communicate with this file, with this backend in Python for calculating the NDVI. So this is the base URL, this is the route, this is the endpoint, and this is actually the parameters that we set. Okay. So let's go back. In here we set the query parameters, and when we set everything for the URL, we run the post method. Okay, so we send the form data, which is the file that you see in here, the image file, and we do that through the URL that we created in here. Okay, so in here we send the image data using a post method to the Python backend, and when we do that, it comes actually in here in this the main file of the FastAPI. The FastAPI sees that if I go back, sees that okay, the request is related to NDVI, so it first routes to the analyze route and then to the NDVI endpoint, okay, which is in here, and then it's sent to this file. Okay, so the image data comes in here, and then the function that we have in here calculates the NDVI for us. So we get the results back. So as I told you, it's just JSON, and after we parsed it, we just return the results. So what it means, let's go back to the app. I select the band numbers. I make sure that the UV-Corn server is running, and then I just click on the calculate NDVI. And you see that it gives me the statistics of the calculated NDVI that actually come from the Python backend, received by the Next.js backend, and then sent by the Next.js backend to the client side Next.js app, and is shown in here. So that's it. A couple of simple integrations and workflows, and you see that how easily we can get something like this from the Python API to the Next.js app like this. So in the next video, we'll see how we can actually get the image of the NDVI from the backend Python and show it on the front-end Next.js app. And then we'll also include more advanced computationally intensive raster analysis functions to make our app more capable, and perhaps we'll add more complex vector-based analysis as well. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.